Thank you, Dean Fountain, and thank you, Provost Ellenberg, for this opportunity. And thank you to each one who has joined us in this great tradition of the Rite of Passage lecture at UWF. As I was preparing for our talk this afternoon, I came to appreciate the importance of this event more and more. Although many of us share the common perspective of academia and of achieving the rank of professor, through this event, we celebrate the things that make each of us unique as we get to know a little bit more about the diverse paths that each of us has taken to become a part of the tapestry of the Academy. Today, I'm privileged to share my small thread in this great weaving. As I thought about my own path to becoming a professor, my very first thought was, this is not where I thought I'd be. But I couldn't very well use that for the title of my lecture. So I began reminiscing about the events that led me to where I am today, looking for another theme. But I continued to be surprised by the unexpected and often unwanted twists and turns that have marked my path to the professorate. But before I go too far down that road, I must say thank you to a number of people who have helped me along my way, influenced my life, and invested in me. Many of these people belong in more than one category. My family, many friends, my teachers, co-authors, colleagues in my department, folks I've worked with in the dean's office here at the university, and the College of Business, across campus, across institutions, and of course, my students. In particular, I want to thank my wife, Michelle, who's been my life companion for over 25 years, and my parents, who not only gave me life, but also taught me about having new life in Jesus Christ. They taught me about God from a very early age, and I came to realize my need for Jesus Christ as my Savior. Through him, I have a settled expectation and informed and confident hope regarding my eternal future. I could exhaust our entire time just saying thank you to each of these people, and to many others that I've probably omitted through my own negligence. Please forgive my brevity and know that I would not be who I am today without each of you. So if the title of my talk today is not where I thought I'd be, one of your first questions is probably, where did you think you'd be? Well, since the time I was in 6th grade, if you had asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have told you that I wanted to be an architect. By the time I was in high school, I was making plans to work with John Portman. I enjoyed studying the work of Frank Lloyd Wright. I went on site visits with an architect in our church, and as a teenager, I even had a subscription to Architectural Digest. As I started my first college-level architecture courses while I was a senior in high school, it seemed that everything was going to work out the way I'd planned. I never thought I'd be doing anything other than architecture, but God had a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. But before I finish that story, I have to tell you one more thing about my high school years. I had attended the same school from kindergarten through 10th grade, but after my sophomore year, that school closed, and I had to go to a new school. Having made my friends, my plans, and my life at this one school, transferring to another school for my junior and senior years was certainly not where I thought I'd be, nor was it where I wanted to be. But God had a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. Only one other person my age transferred to the same school, so we became good friends. To make a 30-year story a bit shorter, my friend started dating a girl at the new school who had an older sister. In fact, she was in college. Nevertheless, during my senior year, I built up enough courage to ask her to go with me to our junior senior, and she said yes. I don't suppose many couples have pictures from their first date, but we do. A little over 4 years later, she said yes again, and this summer we'll celebrate 26 years of marriage. We've been blessed with 5 wonderful children: Benjamin, Catherine, Joshua, Lydia, and Emily. And they don't stay small for very long. They tend to grow up, and certainly some of them tend to be taller than you are at some point. But now back to my story about taking classes in architecture. I had taken accelerated courses at my prior school, but the new school did not offer these courses, so I needed to fill out some credits during my last 2 years to graduate. For example, as a senior, I took 9th grade science with 9th graders. I certainly never thought I'd be there. Also, during my senior year, I started taking architecture classes at the Southern Institute of Technology, which eventually became Southern Polytechnic State University, and which is now part of Kennesaw State University. During my 3rd course in the 3-course foundational design sequence, I realized that I was not doing as well as I had expected. I clearly saw that my work was not of the same caliber of that as my peers, so I went to talk to one of my professors, and I asked him, "What can I do to be a better architect?" His answer was direct: "Nothing. You're not an architect. Find something else to do." I was stunned. I had dreamt of being an architect since elementary school, and now with a few terse words, my dreams began to melt. I reevaluated my dreams and abilities, and I concluded that my professor was correct. It was some of the hardest news I'd had to accept up to that point in my life. That was not where I thought I'd be, but God had a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. As a result of my young soul searching, I concluded that I really enjoyed helping others. So I decided to study for the ministry at Pensacola Christian College. My mom did not oppose my plans, but she did advise me to take a second major just in case things didn't work out with the ministry. With the wisdom that could only come from a seasoned perspective of an 18-year-old, I told her that she needed more faith, but I also obeyed her urgings. I opened the college catalog to look for a second major. I ran my finger down the page, starting with the A's, and got all the way down to accounting. I looked at the description of the program, scanned the list of courses, and said, "Yep, that's my second major. Done." I wish I could tell you what happened differently, but it didn't. That's exactly the way it happened. So perhaps now you begin to understand a little better why I'm not where I thought I'd be. During my sophomore year of college, I was taking intermediate accounting and Koine Greek at the same time when I realized that I did like accounting, and I was terrified of speaking in front of people. Have I mentioned yet that I'm not where I thought I'd be? So I dropped my major in ministry and focused on accounting. As college graduation drew closer, Michelle and I were engaged, and I became singularly impressed with the need to find gainful employment. My plan was to earn my CPA certificate, work as an accountant, and possibly become a partner or a part owner in a business. But before I went down that path, I thought I might as well try a few other roads first. So although I did not want to work at PCC, I made an appointment with the Dean of Business to ask whether or not they had an accounting position available. As I expected, the answer was no. And with that box checked, I began to think about my next prospects. A few days later, though, the dean called me back in and he said, "We don't need any accountants, but would you be interested in teaching accounting?" I had never thought about teaching at all. Recall that I dropped my ministry major because I didn't want to speak in front of people. However, after talking with Michelle, who was already teaching English at PCC, we decided to take this offer. And upon my graduation from PCC, my teaching career began. That's a picture from the yearbook the first year I started teaching. Don't ask me about the hair. I don't know how I got it to get that high. I did receive my degree from PCC, and I was required to begin working on my master's degree immediately. So within about 2 years, I'd finished the Master's of Accountancy program at UWF, go Argos, and then I passed the CPA exam on my first attempt. PCC was not where I thought I'd be starting my career, but God had a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. I vividly remember my first day of class. I started talking about the course and what the students would learn, and I couldn't find a place to breathe. I just kept talking, and eventually I thought to myself, I am either going to pass out or hyperventilate, and it's only my first day of class. So to this day, my first advice to all new teachers is don't forget to breathe. Teaching was a good way to continue my education, to earn my CPA certificate, and provide a stable income. But I had expected to resume my prior plans of working as an accountant after a few years. However, starting with that first harrowing day in the classroom and growing each day thereafter, my soul was filled with a passion I had not experienced before, a passion to help others excel in their own life's callings. In short, a passion to teach. I did not think that teaching would be my career, but God had a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. Others must have seen my passion too, because I was asked to pursue a doctoral degree with the caveat that I could only leave my teaching post for 1 year to complete my coursework. Without realizing how unusual this request was, in May of 1999, I began contacting schools. One after the other, they told me they were not interested in working with me. It seemed hopeless. But eventually, I connected with Dale Flesher at Ole Miss. After reviewing my information, not only was Ole Miss willing to work with me, but someone had just dropped out of their PhD cohort. So if I could be on campus in 2 weeks, I could join their PhD program right away. A flurry of activity ensued, which resulted in my wife and me living about 8 hours apart for a year while I completed most of my coursework. Then I returned with her for 1 more semester to take a few final classes. I completed my dissertation while teaching full-time and defended in August of 2003, receiving my PhD in accountancy from Ole Miss. About a year after finishing my doctorate, I was surprised to be asked to serve as the assistant dean of business at PCC. I loved teaching, and I had never considered a move into administration, but I accepted the position. However, I was even more surprised when only a few months into that role, I was asked to begin serving as the Dean of Business the following academic year. I certainly never thought I'd be working in academic administration, not a teacher, not anywhere, but God had a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. After much wise counsel and prayer, I accepted the position and began serving as the Dean, where I served from 2006 to 2010. At this point in my career, I had been at PCC for nearly 20 years, including my time as a student. My wife and I had many strong friendships with our coworkers, and we had 4 young children under the age of 10, and our 5th child was on the way. However, I began to feel very strongly that God wanted our family to leave PCC. Could this really be the right time to leave? If so, I had to be certain that I was leaving for the right reasons and not just looking for greener pastures or chasing rainbows. After several months of regular fasting and prayer, God's direction was confirmed, and in January of 2010, I communicated my intention to resign, effective in May of that year, with no other job, no likely prospects, and baby number 5 due in June. Yet, I knew that this was the clear direction of God calling me to take a step of faith like none other I have taken in my life. I certainly didn't think I'd be leaving PCC after almost 20 years, but God had a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. I looked at teaching positions in Texas, Colorado, South Carolina, Tennessee, and even up north. We also looked at positions in the Atlanta area, close to our families. But as the month of April drew to a close, I still had no solid prospects and only a few more weeks of gainful employment. Had I taken the right step? Was this really what God wanted me to do? Then I saw an advertisement for a teaching position at UWF, and the contact person was one of my former professors. I had visited several of my UWF professors after earning my PhD to thank them for the part they played in my education, so many of them knew that I had earned my doctorate. To make another very long part of this story shorter, I accepted the opportunity to teach at UWF just days before my teaching position at PCC came to an end, and Emily was born shortly thereafter. I never thought I'd be teaching accounting at my alma mater, but God had a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. Looking forward a few years, in 2015, I passed a major hurdle in academia when I was granted tenure and promotion to associate professor. After spending the first 7 years after receiving my doctorate without a single publication and with very little research activity, I never thought I'd publish anything, let alone be a tenured associate professor. That same fall in 2015, I was asked to change directions again when Dean Tim O'Keefe invited me to take on the role of Associate Dean for the College of Business. I accepted and served in that position until I stepped down in the summer of 2020. And for 7 of those months, I also served as the interim dean for the college while we conducted a successful search for our current dean, Dean Rick Fountain. After stepping down at PCC, I never thought I would work in academic administration again. Then 2016 proved to be one of my most productive years for research. I was privileged to see 2 publications in highly ranked accounting journals. However, the thing about those articles that makes me the proudest is that all of the authors on both of those papers were from the University of West Florida. I never thought I would publish an article in one of the journals we'd read in grad school. And today at this event, we celebrate the achievement of professorship, not just for those of us presenting, but for everyone who has achieved this milestone and for everyone who will achieve this milestone in their careers. But for myself, I can truly say, I never thought I would be a professor of accounting. But God had a bigger plan and a better plan than anything I could have imagined. Looking into the future, our current environment continues to place challenges and changes before us. In truth, few of us thought we would be where we are right now. Global pandemic, online education, Zoom conferences, a virtual rite of passage lecture. But regardless of what we currently face or what we will face in the uncertain future, I have the settled expectation and informed and confident hope that God has a bigger plan and a better plan for my life. And he has a bigger plan and a better plan for you too. I'd be glad to help you make this hope a reality in your own life. In conclusion, I'm not where I thought I'd be, but I'm exactly where I ought to be. For those of you I know well, thank you for your contributions to my life. For those of you who are meeting me for the first time, we are now what I like to call Zoom friends. No matter how the threads of our lives have crossed, if I can ever be of help to any of you, old friends and new alike, please let me know. My contact information is on the screen. Thank you for spending these few moments together today.